Welcome to this week's episode of Lagnapod. I'm Rob Holbert, your host, and sign off, folks. Who's here?
Ashley Trice.
Grant McLaughlin.
Kyle Hamrick.
And I'm Scott Johnson.
And we have a special guest today who doesn't usually join us, our arts and entertainment editor, Kevin Lee, but also the writer of mystery. He always comes up and does some great mystery writing for us. I guess it's not really a mystery, is it?
Historical murders.
Historical murder this week, yes. Kevin, glad to have you here.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be an enigma wrapped in a mystery wrapped
You
in a
are
riddle.
those things. You're all those things.
That's right. Clay, you did the Colonel Dixie murders. You did the Arch McKay murders. What was the photographer? Another press register writer that was
Arch
Arch
McKay.
McKay.
I also did a murder of the first mayor of Saraland, Oscar Driver.
That's right. Yeah.
I forgot about that one.
And then there was a guy that was back in, was it the Jazz Age, that was the publisher or new editor?
Yeah.
He was hired by the publisher at the Register.
Yeah.
That's
And he
what I'm
wasn't
talking about.
murdered, but he got caught in a, what do we want to say?
Sex
Not a
scandal?
sting, but it was like he was set up.
The
He
honeypot sting.
He
right?
liked to frequent houses of ill repute.
Yes. Yeah,
And
he
some
got
of the
some
numbers
trouble.
runners in town, he was on
Right.
a campaign against them, and they set him up on this and scandalized him and sent him
Yes.
packing.
Yeah.
But this week you were talking about another notorious murderers that did not happen in Mobile, but
But has a Mobile connection.
yes. So,
It did have a mobile connection.
Well, a lot
Two
of-
of them, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say this is one of my favorite stories that you've done, and it's really good. But it's on Charles Manson's one of his followers, Patricia Krenwinkel. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Krenwinkel.
Yeah.
Krenwinkel.
Well, so
Nice.
tell us.
Good spelling.
Patricia Krenwinkel had family that lived in Mobile, and I assume there are still some here, but it was hard for me to trace them down. Needless to say, after her notoriety, their family connections kind of hid their connections.
And her notoriety comes from
being one of the Manson murderers
The
in
Manson-
1969.
the
And
Manson
she wasn't
murders.
just hanging out with them. She actually was she killed Abigail Folger.
Yes, she killed Abigail Folger and Rosemary LaBianca
Yeah.
in 2 successive nights of bloody.
Carnage.
Yeah,
She was involved in 7 murders, right? Or there for 7
she was
murders. Right?
prosecuted and found guilty of conspiracy to murder and first-degree murder, 7 counts in California.
Yeah. This is, it's one of these things that, I think maybe a lot of people kind of have some idea that there is some small connection here, but she was definitely involved, and she definitely spent some time in Mobile and actually came here after the murders.
Right. After the murders and before, she
Yeah.
was enrolled at Theodore High School for a couple months
Yeah.
in 1965, and she thought that she was being ostracized there and used the word Yankee. I didn't know that
Yeah.
Southern California would qualify you for
Anybody
Yankee
who's not
status.
from around here, there's Yankees.
That's right.
Yeah, that's it.
She had never made a pot of grits.
Well, yeah, that's right.
And so then she left and went back to Southern California, completed high school, came back here, enrolled at Spring Hill College for 1 semester, and was contemplating becoming a teacher or a nun, which are not mutually exclusive.
But went a different route.
yeah.
Yeah, but then went a different route.
And even like one of the Spring Hill College professors ended up, or priest ended up testifying at her penalty phase part of the trial. So she must have, if he did that for her, she must have had a connection.
Yeah,
strong connection.
everybody has teachers in college that they connect with, and with him being a priest, a Jesuit at that, one of those wild radical Jesuits,
Yes.
he was willing to do what her family wanted him to do and like testify on her behalf as to how placid her demeanor was when she was in class and when she was on campus. And she's serving life right now. She was originally found guilty and given the death penalty. And then a couple of years after that, the California Supreme Court commuted the death penalty. So she and her 3 colleagues, Charles Manson, Leslie Van Houten, and Susan Atkins, their sentences were commuted to life in prison. Susan Atkins was the first of the 4 that died from brain cancer. And then Charles Manson died, and Leslie Van Houten is in the process of finishing her halfway house residence for parole.
So she's been paroled at this point.
She never actually
effectively.
She never actually killed anyone, right? She was just present. Is that
correct?
Yeah.
Although she was found guilty on 2 counts. Yeah. The others were found guilty on 7 counts of murder.
Well, so Kevin, for people who are not intimately familiar with the whole Manson murders and the Manson family, can you kind of take us back and tell us how did Krenwinkel get involved with them and what happened?
She, when you look at the accounts of her life, she sounds like a pretty normal kid.
Yeah.
She was very tenderhearted, loved animals, was involved in her church, was involved in things like Girl Scouts. And then she just evidently had some type of psychological shortcoming where she never felt like she belonged. And Charles Manson was able to, when she met him through a friend of her sister's in the late 60s, Charlie Manson was a hardened convict. He had been in prison since he was a teenager. And so he was wily, like most convicts are. They got to live by their wits.
Right.
And he was able to figure out what her psychological flaw was and exploit it and manipulate her, just like he did the rest of the people in his family. And through a constant barrage of psychedelics and abusive manipulation, he was able to convince these people to do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. So she had an older sister who was a half sister, was an older sister who apparently got into drugs, got into some wildlife, and when she went back out to California, that's kind of where she came in contact. That's how she came in contact with Manson.
And he told her he loved her or that she was beautiful on the first
which
night.
Was something she had never heard before.
Yeah, and then they have sex on the first night that they met.
Yeah.
And that was all she wrote, basically, right?
Yeah. Well, she didn't write it. I did.
Yeah.
That's right. But I did find she must have got pretty confident, after the fact, because she's the one who led the family all to Brian Wilson's ranch. Is that?
That part,
Brian Wilson.
That was part I didn't know. That was part Dennis Wilson.
Dennis Wilson,
who was
of Beach Boys.
Of Beach Boy fame, Brian's younger brother, and oddly enough, was the only actual surfer.
Really,
the Beach Boys.
Didn't know that.
And you look at him, and he looks like a surfer.
Yeah.
He was a young, good-looking guy, and kind of led a carefree lifestyle with his millions of dollars, or with all the wealth he had found through his musical fame. And he picked up Patricia Krenwinkel and one other Manson family member hitchhiking, and ended up taking them back to his place that he was renting on Sunset Boulevard. And once they got their foot in the door, he left, and he came back. He left for a while, a few hours, and came back, and there were these other
the whole
hippies.
Crew showed up. Yeah.
The family showed up and it infested the place, and
with gonorrhea, he said.
That was that part made me laugh out loud. That the guy was going broke from taking care of their gonorrhea.
I mean, it was penicillin.
So Dennis Wilson,
that must be a lot of gonorrhea.
Yeah,
Dennis Wilson. They're coming to Dennis Wilson all the time. Like, man, I need some more help with this gonorrhea. There's and he's just shelling out money to pay for these people.
Yeah, he was used to applause on the stage, but not to clap in his house.
But I think there's a rim shot thing on here, but I don't know which one it is.
And they were there, and they started doing things. Charlie stole a bunch of his gold records from his walls.
That's crazy.
They just ransacked his house.
Charlie wanted to be a musician himself, right?
He had written a bunch of songs, and he was a fairly mediocre musician. And through Dennis, Dennis was getting stoned with these guys and hearing Charlie play, and Charlie's bugging him, introduced me to some people. He introduced him to Terry Melcher, who was Doris Day's son and was a music producer. And they arranged, he went to like Brian Wilson's home studio and recorded some tracks. And Terry said, this is kind of good, but I just don't, I don't think this is going to work. And Roman Polanski's theory, who was the husband of Sharon Tate, who was murdered, was that the frustration from Charlie Manson's creativity was what drove him to commit the murders.
Yes.
I think it was a little deeper than that.
Yeah, I'm going to say there's a lot of frustrated musicians in this world.
But then when you think about the reasons that Roman Polanski can't come to the U.S., maybe he's got some demons in there too.
Yeah. So I mean, that whole thing with the Wilson with Dennis Wilson was something I did not know about
the
Manson family.
And then there was another Manson follower that spent time in Mobile too.
Yeah, a guy named Bruce Davis was originally from Louisiana and spent a few years of his childhood in Mobile. His dad was a welder.
So per capita, do you think?
Mobile's hitting it with the Manson family.
It's kind of like our thing with baseball, Major League Baseball players from Mobile. We're batting above our weight class. We're fighting above our weight class in that regard. Manson wise, we're pretty heavy.
Yeah, and I wrote that story years ago about John Paul Franklin, who was the serial killer that was from Mobile, the guy that shot Larry Flint.
Yeah.
So Mobile's got some serial killing going on.
Well, God bless.
It's the Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
It could be that.
The Azalea City, the serial killer city.
Manson and Moon Pies.
Yeah.
So after they got Wilson finally, I guess his agent finally had to kick the Manson family out of Wilson's house.
Dennis left.
Yeah, he
left.
He
left the house to the family because he was so scared of them.
Yeah. And so the manager apparently was not and told him to get out.
Yes.
And then
as managers are.
So they went to Spahn Ranch after that, right? Everybody knows, the people who are familiar with the Manson murders are aware of that name, and tell that story.
Okay, so George Spahn was an old guy that, in the 1950s and 60s, Western TV and movies were really big. And so, if you had a location where you could put up some ramshackle movie building fronts to make it look like an old Western town, you could rent it out to people to shoot Westerns and all types of stuff like that there. So Spahn Ranch was just north of Los Angeles, up near the valley. And Spahn Ranch had kind of fallen into disrepair by the time Charlie came across it. And so he and the family kind of made themselves at home in the quasi buildings that were there. They weren't really meant for habitation, but the weather in Southern California is so nice, it didn't make that much of a difference. And George Spahn was very fond of all these young girls that followed that followed Charlie around. And George was blind, so he needed a lot of help. And they would do odd jobs around there and, flatter George with a bunch of attention from the girls, and he let them stay there. They ended up killing one of the ranch hands that were there before they were there.
The collateral damage, that's just, but I mean, you got a free place to stay.
Yeah, exactly. But George was, he was just kind of an unwilling accomplice, I guess you could say. I mean, he didn't really take part in anything, but
that was sort of their base of from where then the murders took place. And what prompted all that? What was the reason? I mean, what caused them that day to say, we're going to go out and do these things?
There's competing theories on that. The people and some of the members of the family said that they had killed a music teacher named Bobby Hinman that lived in Topanga Canyon not long before that in a dispute over some money. And when they killed him, I think it was Susan Atkins that wrote the word pig on the wall in his home with his blood.
Oh, yeah, right.
And so then some of the family members said that in order to cover up things for the people that actually committed the murder of Bobby Hinman, they committed these other murders to confuse the police. But it didn't really make a lot of sense. The theory that made more sense was the one that was used by the prosecutor in the trial, who was LA DA or Assistant DA Vincent Bugliosi. And he wrote a book that turned into a made-for-TV movie called Helter Skelter.
Right. Remember that one?
Everybody knows that. Yeah.
Yes.
And so he said that Charlie came up with this crazy theory that the Beatles were four angels of the apocalypse that were talking to him through the White Album and telling him that they were prophesizing that there was going to be a huge race war in the U.S., that black people would kill off all the white people. And then because Charles considered black people genetically inferior mentally, that they would need him to lead them.
They would need Charles to lead them.
They would need Charles to lead them.
How convenient for Charles.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
And this sounds exactly like something that you would see among a guy that had spent the early part of his life in prison because of the racial tension in prison.
Yeah.
And so he convinced his followers who were under his sway to help take part in this Helter Skelter, which was the Beatles song that Charlie interpreted as a name for Armageddon or a nationwide or worldwide war. And so when they did the killings, they put other things like pig on the wall in blood and helter-skelter and things like that. And Bugliosi, used that theory in the trial to get the conviction for Manson.
So they first go to Roman Polanski's house, right?
Yeah, on Cielo Drive, because Terry Melcher used to live there.
Right. Okay.
Oh, so they thought they were going after him.
They claimed that initially they thought that Terry Melcher was still living there. However, it came out later on that Charles Manson had visited that property after Melcher left and while Sharon Tate was living there. So it looks like he was just fixated on that as a target.
Yeah.
And he didn't care who he murdered. He just wanted to murder some people.
Yeah. And so they killed how many people there?
Four
people.
No, five.
5 people.
I'm sorry. They killed a guy that was visiting the caretaker to sell him a clock radio.
Yeah.
Poor kid was sitting in his Nash Rambler.
Yeah.
When they came up the driveway, and they just shot him 4 times.
Wow.
And then slipped into the house through a back window, gathered up the inhabitants, bound them in the central room, and got some rope and made like they were going to hang them, but then they stabbed and shot them. And I think they eventually started to hang Sharon Tate, but I think she was pretty much dead by that point.
Yeah. And she was pregnant.
Yeah, she was 8.5 months pregnant. Yeah. She was begging for the life of her child.
Yeah.
Susan Atkins said later on that at one point she had contemplated cutting the child out of her after she killed her, which is just, that shows you how twisted.
I mean, you write about how many times they stabbed their victims. I mean, just like an inordinate amount, just
41,
crazy.
Yeah,
41
Abigail
times.
Folger got stabbed 41 times.
I mean, it's just crazy how much.
That's just frenzied, literally frenzied. Right. And the thing that stood out to me when I was reading all the research for this was that Patricia Krenwinkel said at one point, Tex Watson, who was a guy, a Manson family member that was along with her and Susan Atkins on that first night, told, and they had another member with them named Linda Kasabian that was outside. She didn't take part in it. She actually turned state's evidence because she was so freaked out by it, thankfully. But Tex told Patricia, go out to the caretaker's cottage, see if there's anybody in there and kill them too. And Patricia said when she was making her way to the cottage, at some point she stopped and had a moment of clarity about what am I doing?
Right.
This is crazy. And then went ahead and kept on doing it
anyway.
Afterward.
Right.
So, that kind of blows her defense of mental incompetence and the whole thing, because she did have a moment of clarity with it.
So then I guess was the following night that they
went to Waverly Drive in another part of Los Angeles, still up in the canyons north of Los Angeles Central. And there was a wealthy grocery store chain owner named
LaBianca.
Yeah, LaBianca was the last name. Rosemary and Leno LaBianca.
Leno, that's
and
right.
Leno was the one that started the grocery chains, but they got them. Actually, Charles Manson went with them that night, went to the house, tied up the LaBiancas first, told them, I'm not going to hurt you. Don't worry about anything. He was a man of his word because he didn't hurt them.
Right.
He left and had his followers come in and do all the killing.
But why did they pick them again? Does anybody
Just
know?
Rich people, rich white.
There were indications that some family members had been to a party in that neighborhood not far from there, not very long before that.
Yeah, and just maybe saw the house or figured out they knew who was there.
They probably figured out that there was, or heard somebody say there's a guy over there that has got a bunch of money. From
in both of these cases, didn't the Manson followers smear the walls with blood and write things?
Yes.
And Patricia was one of the, she wrote Helter Skelter on there, right?
Yeah.
Misspelled it. Yeah.
Helter Skelter.
Well, that
was one of the things.
That time in Alabama ruined her education.
Well, she got most of her education in Southern California.
I know. I just said, just trying to blame Alabama for it. Right. But the thing that was interesting is that the cops initially were tried to say that these were unrelated events.
Yes.
Because
the Tates were part of Hollywood.
Right.
There were drugs found in the house, mainly marijuana.
Yeah.
And the LaBiancas were upstanding citizens.
Right.
And so the police,
regardless of the fact someone wrote pig on the wall on both of them, or
the manner of death was similar, and all the other things that now would be glaring signs.
Right.
They fell back on prejudices.
Yeah.
And as we were talking about earlier, it even came down to a news crew doing their own detective work to find some of the evidence.
Yeah. Wow.
So shortly after that's when Manson told Patricia, "You need to get out of here," and that's when she went back.
Well, what happened was a week after that, actually the same weekend that the Woodstock Music Festival was going on in New York, on the other side of the country, the Manson family had been stealing VWs and turning them into doom buggies and taking them back to well, I mean, if you're in for a dollar, in for in for a penny, in for a pound, I think is the phrase. Right. But they had been committing auto theft, and the cops raided Spahn Ranch in connection with the auto theft, arrested a bunch of them, and then the Manson family members decided things were getting too hot here. They had found another vacated movie location set out closer to Death Valley called Barker Ranch. That was up some wash. It was very difficult to get to. And they went out there and they were inhabiting that place. Once again, the Doom Buggy deal came back to haunt them. Some cops raided the place.
Yeah.
After that raid, Charles told Patricia, "You need to get out of town because I don't want us all here." And so he said, "Go visit your mom in Alabama." So she called her dad and said, "Dad, I've got to get out of town."
Yeah.
Dad helped her.
He was still in California at that point.
Yeah, he helped her get back here. I don't know whether she drove or flew. I do know that in one of the accounts that I read, it said that she came in on National Airlines and even gave the flight number. But then when I looked up research for whether National Airlines served Mobile Airport at that time, it didn't. So I just kind of left that.
See, that's fact checking, folks, right there. That's fact checking.
Well, I'm not gonna.
Yeah.
I don't want to get sued by National Airlines.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah.
Even though I think they're probably
very
defunct.
litigious. They're very litigious.
So she ends up off Range Lawn Road at Aunt
out in Tillman's Corner.
Yeah, Aunt Garnett's. And you said that neighborhood is no longer.
That neighborhood's gone now.
Gone, yeah.
Which I found I don't know what, I looked up Romar Resorts too, the people that own that whole block now, and it's some company out of Florida.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do out there because that's all
vacant land, industrial land.
Yeah, and it's all industrial sites out there. So I don't know what kind of resort you're going to put there.
Yeah. It's still called
maybe that's a story for one of these guys.
Yeah, maybe.
But so anyway, then I guess the LA police call Mobile. And
they notified Mobile that there was somebody here that was connected with the Manson murders.
And that was this week, I guess 50-something years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple days ago. It was Monday when she was arrested. 69, so 50, what is this, 56 years ago?
56 years ago.
Yeah. On Monday, she was arrested. The cops went out there and they went to her uncle and aunt's house. And I think her mother is the one that lived a few miles. She gave a different address initially when she was arrested, and it was a few miles away. And I think that's where her mother was living. But I think she had been staying with her aunt and uncle over in Tico.
Yeah.
And so the cops went out there and she was not there. And then when they went to leave, she drove by in a little sports car that somebody else was driving. And they noticed when she drove by that she pulled her hat down to kind of cover her face up. And they thought, well, maybe we better stop those two.
Yeah.
So she gave them a fake name at first.
So was she aware the cops were coming for her, or just was kind of that?
I just think her mother said that when she was in town that she had been acting kind of jumpy.
Yeah.
So she, certainly you go by, and I think the officers that were out there were in plain clothes, but still, if you've ever seen a plainclothes police officer, they still look like a police officer.
If you notice that they're plainclothes police officer.
Yeah, well, if you've recently committed a string of murders.
You probably are starting to notice them.
But so then today is her 78th birthday.
Yes,
and
it is.
She is in jail, but she spent her, 20th birthday?
22nd
birthday in Mobile County, 56 years ago today.
Yeah. The only person that wished her happy birthday was probably Bubba Marsal, who was her attorney, a legendary attorney in Mobile for some of his courtroom antics.
Yeah. So that was also a fascinating part of the story, is just that the effort to try to keep her in Alabama and to try to keep her from being extradited to California was kind of epic.
Yeah. Marsal took a very unique, or not very unique, there's not degrees of unique, but sorry, I'm a word nerd.
That's okay.
He took a unique tack in that the warrant for extradition had been signed by the lieutenant governor in California, and he looked up the statute, and the wording said that it had to be the actual governor.
Yeah.
And so he fought that extradition.
The early auto pen defense here,
yes. Who was Reagan would have been governor of California.
That's what it was. Reagan was governor at that point, yes.
And so he fought that for a long time. A judge ended up ruling against him, and they were still fighting it on various grounds. And then Squeaky Fromme, who was another Manson family member, later become erstwhile assassin of Gerald Ford.
She tried to kill Gerald Ford,
yes, and didn't do a very good job of it.
She missed him. Did she try to shoot him on a tarmac of a?
I don't remember because her and Sarah Moore had their assassination attempts.
So two people tried to kill Ford within like a month, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Jerry Ford. Why would anybody want to kill Jerry Ford?
He could not navigate a flight of stairs, but he could dodge a bullet.
Right. Apparently, yeah, he was quick. So Squeaky,
anyway, the extradition. She was fighting that. Squeaky Fromme. Charles Manson got in contact with Squeaky Fromme and told her that he had changed his mind and he thought that they would present a better case for defense if she, Van Houten, Atkins, and himself presented a united front, quote unquote, at trial. So Squeaky started sending all this correspondence to Patricia, and Patricia diligently changed her mind and said, well, now I want to go back to California.
So they put her on a plane.
They put her on a plane. Yeah. I don't know if it was National Airlines or not, but it left from Mobile Airport.
I think you mentioned the airline. I think it was Eastern. I think you mentioned it. So. I think it's Eastern is what you mentioned in the
Eastern
story.
Was huge in the U.S. in the South back then.
I vaguely remember Eastern Airlines. Yeah,
they were based out of Atlanta.
Yeah,
and Frank Borman, who was a former astronaut, used to be their president.
Well, look at this guy. I mean, man. Okay, don't play airline trivia with Kevin. So then they go. I mean, when they get her out there. The trial itself is a circus, right? I mean, there's just all sorts of stuff going on with that,
to say the least.
Yeah.
At one point, Charles Manson wanted to testify for himself, and the judge wouldn't let him do it in front of the jury because he knew it would prejudice the jury. Yeah. And so he testified to an open jury empty jury box, which was very famously portrayed in the TV movie Helter Skelter. Steve Railsback, who was an actor, did an incredible job, probably the best on-screen job of depicting Charles Manson that's ever been. And the girls would stand up in court sometimes and start singing or start yelling. At one point, Susan Atkins scuffled with a bailiff and grabbed evidence off one of the tables and ripped it up.
They carved X's in their head.
Yeah, Charles showed up to court one day. He had gotten something sharp while he was locked up and carved an X into his forehead.
That would later become the swastika, right?
That he later turned into a swastika.
Right, yes.
You know, and the girls followed suit. First they did the X's and then they did the swastikas.
Okay.
And so did the Manson family members that were surrounding the courthouse on the sidewalks outside.
That's the other part. You said there were people crawling around on their knees out there.
You can find the footage on YouTube of Squeaky Fromme and some of her compatriots crawling on the sidewalks outside Los Angeles courthouse. And the most amusing part about it is watching the looks on the faces of the passersby.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. These older people that are looking at them and looking at the news cameras like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And at one point, Charles lunged at the judge with a sharpened pencil, after which the judge started carrying a pistol under his robes to court. I mean,
the idea that the judge could get his pistol out faster from under his robes than the bailiffs could get to him, but he was not taking any chances.
Exactly. And it was just like you said, it was a circus. It was before the O.J. Simpson trial. It was the trial of the century in the 20th century.
Yeah. I mean, you make that point in your story and it sounds like it. I mean, just, you know, this is one of those things that just has sort of faded in a lot of people's memory. People know Charles Manson and how crazy he was, and you know about the Manson family, but I think a lot of folks have forgotten who the people were involved and just how bizarre all of this was. And especially, I mean, I guess we're more jaded these days where you have mass shootings every week. But I mean, back then, the concept of these mass murders happening in 2 nights is just probably had people locking their doors.
Well, and I always knew there was some tenuous Krenwinkel connection to Mobile, but I didn't realize that her mom lived the rest of her days out here till she died in 2005. So,
yeah, and I believe she's buried here as well, but I didn't go visit her gravesite.
Yeah, but it's a great story, Clay. I mean,
it is. It's fantastic, and we really appreciate you writing it and coming here to talk about it. Yeah. Anything else you think we need to
have we covered all the
tell the listeners about
at this point?
Man, there's so much stuff out there about Charles Manson.
Yeah.
You could make a life out of researching all the things that have been written about those people. I think that aspect of this that sticks with me is, and I've mentioned this to Ashley, is I just felt so, every time I would look at this, I felt so bad for her parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just heartbreaking.
Well, they lost their older daughter, and
her older half-sister Charlene died about the time that Pat was going to trial.
Here in Mobile.
Yeah, she drowned in Halls Mill Creek, and it was tied to her heroin use.
Yeah.
And they just went through so much hardship, and neither one of them seemed like bad people. They just didn't deserve it. And the other part of it that sticks with me is how vulnerable the most average person can be to manipulation.
Yeah.
That people,
because her parents were just stunned that their child had turned into this. I mean, most parents would be.
Right. And later on, Leslie Van Houten and Patricia Krenwinkel, now granted, you take it with a grain of salt because these are people that did this kind of stuff. But later on, after they fell out of the sway of Charles Manson, they just realized what idiots they had been. I mean, Patricia Krenwinkel says that, the legacy of her life is just going to be ugly.
I thought the whole ending was just that ending was really something that was really powerful. That her discussion about her life having basically she's leaving nothing behind of any value and just sorrow and and ugliness, and she has gotten degrees, right? I mean,
and she trained firefighters. They have a program out in California that everybody has probably heard about in the last few years with all the fires that have been out there. But they have inmates that work off time by fighting wildfires, which is highly dangerous work. And she tried to at least make something useful of her life by training those people.
Yeah. And she's obviously admits that the error of her ways and all the all the terrible things she's done at this point. But I think she had been paroled even, and then Gavin Newsom said no.
He looked at a psychologist profile of her and said that he didn't think that she had fully embraced her complicity in it.
With his political aspirations.
Well,
you don't want to be the guy that lets a Manson family
run for
member
president,
out. Probably
wait until after that run.
Yeah. But, he didn't do that with Leslie Van Houten.
Sure. Well, he wasn't thinking about it probably at that point as much. But
Leslie Van Houten didn't write on the walls in anybody's blood.
Yeah.
What Patricia did was that much more ghastly. But there was a moment in the story where Patricia Krenwinkel, in the first few years after she was incarcerated, was talking to one of the other inmates and talking about how wonderful, Charlie had these special insights and he could do this and he could do that. And some other inmate was like, honey, that's every pimp and hustler I've ever known.
I loved that quote. Another favorite quote that we've talked about, Clee, is her, her fondness for Mobile. I like living in Mobile.
She told reporters after she'd been arrested that she loved the nature here. And she said, I love Mobile. It's beautiful. I like living in Mobile. It's beautiful.
That's a chamber. That's just like Patricia Krenwinkel. Yeah. So
get a billboard.
Tiny.
Mobile's beautiful.
Somebody call Bradley Byrne. I'm sure you got him on the
there you go. Yeah. Get him there. Well, look, thanks a lot for coming out today and talking with us. And I think it's a really fascinating story, and I hope folks will get out there and read it because it is a really interesting piece of history, and Mobile's a little part in it. And so,
it's made my wife very happy because she loves murder stories.
Yeah. I mean, the whole world does these days. I mean, we spend all of our time reading murder stories.
I'm just grateful that I will no longer be having dreams about meeting the Manson family.
Well, and you can get rid of that swastika on your head now.
Yes.
It's a tattoo.
I know. I noticed it was henna. I knew it was henna. All right. Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks.
And that's all we got time for this week, folks. So we'll be back next week with the next episode of Lagnapod. Thanks for listening to us.
The Lagnapod is a Something Extra publishing production. Executive producers are Rob Holbert and Ashley Trice. Music is by Sunpulse Sounds and Electro Animals. Only subscribers like you have access to this podcast. Tell your friends they can sign up at my.lagnapmobile.com. For advertising opportunities, please call 251-450-4466.